Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah and day 5 of the Christmas Craft Countdown, where I'm sharing 20 brand new Cricut paper crafts in 20 days. Today's project are these lovely watercolour cards. There's a Christmas tree and a star and snowflake based design. These use Cricut's watercolour pens to create a lovely effect with all of those images. The Cricut does all the drawing and then you use a water brush to spread out the colours and make it look like this has been painted by hand rather than drawn out with a machine. Both of these designs are included with today's project. The watercolour pens all come in a pack together, and these ones will fit the Explore Air 2 or 3 or the Maker or the Maker 3. These are the colours that you get, so those are the colours that I've used in these designs so that you can match it up. The pack also comes with a water brush to allow you to make the painting effect with everything included in the pack. If you've got the Cricut Joy or Joy Extra, then you would need to buy the watercolour markers compatible for those machines. These ones are the larger ones for the larger machines, but they do also make them for the Joy and Joy Extra. The best material for doing the drawing on is watercolour paper. I bought this pad on Amazon. Watercolour pad. It's thicker than regular cardstock and specifically designed for you to put water on it so the card shouldn't buckle or wrinkle. If you use regular cardstock, you might find if you add water to that, it kind of wrinkles up because it's not sort of supposed to be designed for taking in the water, whereas a particular kind of watercolour pad will work much better. This one is quite thick, it's 300 GSM, which is £140, and this works really, really well. I didn't have any problems with it wrinkling up, even when I added loads of water to it when I was testing, just to see how it all held up. Alright, so without any further ado, let's jump straight on and see how to make these lovely watercolour cards. Let's get started. The files for this project are free for the next 24 hours. Here's how to download them. Register a free ticket for the Christmas Craft Countdown at craftwithsarah.com/Christmas24. After registering, you'll get an email which contains a link to the schedule page for the countdown. Visit the schedule page to find and download today's files. Each download is only available for free for 24 hours after it goes live. If you've missed some, check out the Instant Access Bundle at craftwithsarah.com/Christmas24 bundle, which gives immediate and ongoing access to all of the files from the Christmas Craft Countdown, plus lots of extra bonus designs. The download comes in a zip folder. You need to unzip this before uploading the SVG files into Cricut Design Space. Here's what the two watercolour card designs look like when they're uploaded into Cricut Design Space. If you're not sure how to get to this step, check out the schedule page for the Christmas Craft Countdown, and within there, look for the Foundation Learning section near the top of the page. In there is a link to a separate tutorial on how to upload SVG files into Cricut Design Space. Now you might notice these two designs on the screen do not really look like the ones on the cards that I just showed you. And that is because when you upload an SVG into Design Space, it doesn't automatically recognize that we want to be drawing these with the pens, and especially not that we want it to do it with the watercolor pens. So we need to format each of these designs to tell Cricut that we want it to draw them out. Don't worry, it is really easy to do. I'll do the snowflake one first, so I'm going to click on it and then ungroup the layers by pressing the ungroup button at the top of the layers panel. Then I can go through all of these one at a time to change them to a draw layer. When you click each layer, you'll notice that you see a colour up near the top of the screen next to the drop down that says Operation. This is the colour of pen you want to choose. So what we're going to do, this one is orange, go into where it says Operation, change it to Pen, and then click the little black box that appears next to it, and this is where you can choose the type of pen. To do it with the watercolour markers, open up and go into Marker 1mm, then scroll all the way down to the bottom of this list, and right down the very bottom is where the watercolour pens appear, and you can tell if you're choosing the right ones because it says watercolour in brackets after it. So I'll choose the orange one, and now you can see my stars are appearing as orange lines instead, and that's what we want. Now I can click the next one down. This one is purple in my colour box, so I'll change it to pen, click into here, go to marker 1mm all the way to the bottom and click purple. And then the next one, click on this one. This one is blue, so we can go back to pen, change it to marker 1mm all the way down to the bottom and choose the blue one. Got 2 left. The next one is red. Change it to pen, go into 1mm marker all the way down the bottom and red. One more, so I can click it here. This one's yellow. Go back to pen, then, wrong one, marker 1mm all the way down the bottom and choose the yellow option. This is looking much better than it did when we first loaded it into Design Space. I will show you how to turn it into an actual greetings card, because at the moment if you were just to click make, this would not work out because all your bits would be in different pieces on different pieces of paper. So we're not quite done with it yet, but I just want to move on and do the pen layers for the Christmas tree too. So once again, I'll ungroup it. I've got a few more layers this time, but it's the same process. So click through them one by one. This one's yellow, so I would go into the pen tool, click the little box, change it to marker, all the way down the bottom, and choose yellow. And just keep doing that for all of them, exactly like we did on the first card, working through and getting all of those colours changed to the correct one, and make sure you choose the watercolour pens. Now that's all of my tree done as well. Okay, for now I'm going to drag a box around all of the tree layers and group them by pressing the group button at the top of the layers panel, and then hide it by clicking the eye in the layers panel. And do the same for the snowflakes, drag a box around everything, group it, and then hide it. And that's to empty out my canvas so I can start making some card fronts for these to go on. I'll go into shapes and then choose a square. I'll be making 5 by 7 inch cards, and Design Space no longer disappears the box once you click into a shape, so you can get rid of it either by clicking the arrow here, or you can click shapes again and it will go. I want to make this 10 inches wide and 7 inches tall, so that when it's folded in half it will be 5 by 7. So I'll unclick my padlock to open it and then go 10 by 7. And then let's make this maybe a yellow. And then I want to put a score line down the middle. If you don't have a scoring tool or stylus for your machine, you can leave this step out. But if you do have one, go into shapes again, choose a score line, make it the height of the card, which is 7 inches, drag a box around both of these and press align center to put the score line exactly in the middle, and then down the bottom of the layers panel press attach. Attach is what tells the Cricut to do the scoring on this rectangle. Now I'm going to build up another layer to go underneath my watercolour picture, just to add a little bit of extra visual interest. And choose another square and make it maybe 1/2 inch smaller on each side, so that would be 4.5 wide and 6.5 tall. This can be a darker orange or yellow. And then click it, duplicate it. This time, this one's going to be white. This will be the one that I'll do the drawing on. And I'll make it 1/4 inch smaller again, which makes it 4.25 by 6.25. And add that in there. I want one of these for each of my cards, so select everything and press the duplicate button at the top of the layers panel and move one down underneath. Then I can turn on one of my watercolour graphics, click it and press arrange, bring to front, and then position it and resize it until I'm happy with how that's looking on my card front. To put it exactly in the middle, click on the group, press shift on your keyboard and choose the white square that it's on in the layers panel, and then go align and then center. I had it pretty much spot on anyway. When you're happy with the position, with the watercolour layers and that white rectangle still selected, down the bottom of the layers panel, press attach. That will join all the pen lines onto the white bit of card, which means it will do the drawing on this rectangle in all the different colours, which is exactly what we want. And then I'll go down the bottom one and do my Christmas tree. I think this time for this one, I will make my card a green colour to sort of go into that Christmas tree vibe. And a darker green there. We need to go arrange, bring to front with the watercolour graphic. And then select that, press shift on the keyboard and choose the white rectangle. Go align, centre, and then with them still both selected, press attach. And these are now ready for me to cut out. I'll save the project first. We've done quite a bit of work here. We don't want to lose it for any reason. I'll call it test. Ooh, cannot spell watercolour cards. And save. Then I want to show you what it looks like when you click on make. So what you should see is your two white rectangles with all of the draw layers on top. If you see the draw layers in random places on random colours, that probably means that you haven't attached it correctly. So go back and check over that part of the video and just make sure all your draw lines are attached to their relevant piece underneath. And then I've also got all the colours to cut from cardstock to make up my card. You can change the paper size in these drop downs, and I like to move these around so that it takes up a little bit less space on my cardstock. I've now got everything looking exactly as I want it to in Design Space, so I can press continue to connect to my machine. I'm using an Explorer Air 3 for this video, but it will work the same on the Explorer 2 or 3 or the Maker or Maker 3. As my watercolour card is quite thick, I'm going to use the craft board setting to cut it out. If you don't have this setting and you want to use it, you can click Browse All Materials and then search for Craft with a K in here, and then it will appear. You could also try heavy cardstock, but I think craft board will be a little bit better as it cuts a little deeper. Okay, it's then telling me here what I need to do. So it's telling me, why has it just decided not to? There we go. I don't think I'd quite selected it properly. So what it's telling me now is I need to load my green watercolour pen into clamp A, my fine point blade, which is the regular blade that comes with the machine, into clamp B, and then load my Cricut mat. The A clamp is the one on the left, so it's not the one that the blade goes in, it's the other one. So I'll open it up. I've got my green watercolour pen, take the lid off, and then put the pen in. We're going to push down until it clicks. I'm not sure you'll be able to hear it, but we'll give it a try. That was quite a loud, thunky click, actually, so you probably, hopefully did hear it. And then I can close that up. I've already got my watercolour paper loaded on the Cricut mat. So let's load that in. It's going to go away and think about it and get ready to cut. The first thing it will do is all the drawing that has any green on it, and then once it's done that, it will pause and then the screen will change on my computer and it will ask for the next colour. But for now, I'm going to push the flashing play button to start the drawing of the green. Hopefully you can still hear me over the Cricut, but you can see as it's going, it's doing all the drawing. Don't worry that it's doing the lines more than once. This is intentional. It's so that you get more of that watercolour ink on the paper to give a better effect once we start adding the water to it later. So it's going to go and do everything on the designs in green, and then we'll switch back to my computer screen to show what to do next. Alright, so my Cricut's now finished and the play button is flashing. I'm not going to do anything yet, but I will switch back over to my computer. My screen's now changed. I've got this little pop-up window. It's telling me to load the blue watercolour pen in clamp A and then press the flashing go button. When you're changing your pen colours, it's really important not to eject your mat, otherwise your Cricut will lose its place and you'll have to start again. So we're doing all of these changing of the pens without pressing the load unload button. The only button you'll want to press throughout this process is the play button, which is the go button. Undo your clamp A and pull the pen out. And then put the lid back on, you don't want that drying out. And then get the next one, the one that it tells you to do on the screen. So mine was the blue. I'll put that in, push it down so it clicks, close up, and then push the play button. Now it's going to do everything on both of my card designs that have the blue colour. Then it will pause again, the screen will update, and I'll be doing the next colour. So I'm not going to show you the whole entire drawing process, as I think that might be a little bit uninteresting to watch. But what I'm going to do is just pause my video recording, get all of this drawn out in all my colours, and then finish the rest of the cut process. And then we'll see how to start watercolouring our Christmas cards. Now I've got my 2 card fronts all cut and drawn with the Cricut watercolour pens. This is what they look like straight out of the machine, so I haven't done any of that watercolouring yet, so all the lines look nice and crisp and sharp. Before I get started with my watercolouring, I'm going to do a little bit of practice with the pens just to get used to the process. The watercolour pens come with a water brush in the pack. You can unscrew this, take the lid off and then unscrew it, and then fill it with water. I found that if you add warm water, not hot, but warm, it can help the watercolour effect go a little bit better. So I've got sort of warm water in here. And how these work is there's a brush on the tip. As you squeeze it, water comes out, and then you can brush it like you would a normal paintbrush. So let's have a little go. Just draw some simple pictures. Let's do some hearts. I'm going to do one with just one line and one with 3 so that we can see how having more lines will change the effect. And then let's use my orange. Do a little flower as well. Practice doing different colours. You might find with your pens that some of them work better than others with the watercolouring. Now, I don't know if it's just because I've got a bad pack, but my orange hardly spreads the colour out at all. Whereas some of the other ones, like the green, seem to work a lot better. I'll show you a few examples. You'll also want a tissue or a piece of kitchen roll to help clean the brush in between the colours. Otherwise you'll find your colours will all mush together, especially if you go from a lighter colour like a yellow onto a darker one. Alright, so I've got my brush. I'll just first show you what I mean. So you can get them wet with the brush and then pull the colour out with the water to spread it out, and you see that green is really spreading, and the more you go over it, the more you can sort of pull it out. And you're not trying to drench the card, don't get it completely wet through, otherwise you might damage the card itself. Watercolour paper obviously is intended for water, so it will hold quite a bit, but you also end up with some of that ink in the pen. It's a little bit faint. Let's try and hold it up a bit. It's sort of here. I'm not sure you can really see. It looks more obvious in real life than it does on my camera, I think. To clean your brush, just give it a little squeeze. Get some water going and then run it over your kitchen towel until it comes clean. And here's my orange. I'll show you what I mean about this one not working as well. It just doesn't seem to have anywhere near as dramatic an effect as the green did. But it's still fine. Okay, so you can colour in shapes by pushing that ink inwards. For example, on that middle of the flower. And then I'll give my brush a little clean and do the edge. So going over the edge with the water and then pushing inwards to colour in with that purple. It doesn't seem to blend the original lines quite as well as I would have liked to have seen. There's still quite an obvious edge, if you know what I mean. But it does fill in nicely when you use that water. And then I've got my red over here. Could fill that in. You can also go the other way and spread it outwards instead to fill around the edge in that other direction. And I've got my swirly bit. So I think it is a nice idea to have a little play before you start on your cards, especially if you're new to the pens, just to have a little practice about what you can do, what works and what doesn't work for you. You might find when you're filling in the cards that you don't quite have enough colour coming off and you want a bit more. So what colour should I do? Let's go blue. If that happens, what you can do is take a scrap of card and just draw on it with the watercolour pens. So let's say I was doing one of my snowflakes on here and it wasn't quite filling in as much as I wanted. I could do this, go over it with my brush, and that will get the blue onto my water brush. So then I could go over to my card and just put the brush over it, and I've got that extra bit of blue. So if you're finding that you want darker colours, this is a nice way to do it, and you can just keep building up as you go to get it darker and darker. Right, I think that's enough practice. Blue is the hardest I found to get off the brush, and it does sort of stain a little bit. So now even though the colour's not coming off, the brush still looks blue, but there isn't actually any blue left on it. Let's get this one in. I'll just get them started on camera rather than do the whole things. I like to work light to dark, so I'm going to do the lightest first, which is the yellow. And I want to pull out the yellow from the really thick bit in the middle. Pull out that yellow. So I'm sort of almost filling in the gap between the two. I tried a couple of little experiments when I was doing this just to see how well the pens work in different situations. And one thing I tried on some of my other test ones was doing the watercolour one day and not making the card until the next day to see if it would still blend out, and it did still blend out just fine. So if you don't have time to do everything in one day, then it was certainly fine the next day. I didn't leave it any longer than that. So I'm just sort of going over these lines, trying to merge them in a little bit, blend them in with each other, and get this yellow going around. My yellow also doesn't always tend to blend out very well. Also, I am not a natural painter. I am not good at painting, so my watercolouring attempts are probably not very good. But you know what? It's a fun process. I'm enjoying doing it, and that is really what matters. Okay, if I hold that up, that's now blended out, filled in with that yellow. Clean the brush off. For these stars, they've got a yellow in the middle and then orange for the actual star shape. I think I might do a little bit of yellow on my scrap to try and bring a little bit more yellow into the middle. Load up my brush. It's got yellow on it now. Go in the middle. Push that out of the orange. Just go a little bit more on each side. Some more. So I'm sort of pushing that out, the colour a little bit. Looks like a little explosion of colour. And now I've got more orange on the brush. I probably don't need to load up the yellow, but I'll do a little bit just in case. Okay, that's those top ones. For the snowflake in the middle, because this is so detailed, when we watercolour it, it's going to pretty much fill in all the gaps. So that's what I'm going to do there. I probably should have done the red first because it's a lighter colour. Push a bit of blue out. I'm going to try and blend it with the red. So getting my blue out sort of most of the way up to that red star, but not all the way. And now I'm going to push the red so that hopefully it will sort of touch in with the blue. Okay, so then you can just work through finishing it all however you want to. I've got one that I made earlier. For this one, I've already put it onto my finished card. So it's very similar with how that was done. Got my little blue. This time I did it a bit different, so I kept the blue to the snowflake, pushed the red off towards the yellow instead. You can get different effects depending on which direction you push that ink in. And then we'll move on to the tree. Oops. So you can either do your green first and then the baubles after, which is nice because then the baubles will sort of go on top of the green, or you can try it the other way around. I found green is the best colour for pushing out that watercolour effect. So it'll look really nice when that's all done. Just sort of going over those lines, pushing that green out, filling in the tree. And I would continue doing that all over. And then I've got the trunk at the bottom, which we can fill in with brown. This is subtle, this one again. And for the baubles, enough, we can sort of fill those too. If you want more of an effect, you could colour them in with the matching pens. Do those two as an example. And then that will allow you to really push out the colour a long way to make it look like they're glowing on the tree. Do little circles around it to push out that colour. And that's how those two look. So however you colour it, go ahead and get all of that done, and then you'll want to make sure they're really, really dry before you make it into the finished card, because as it dries, the card will sort of firm up again. Whereas when it's wet, it can be a little bit prone to tearing. You may find, especially if you're using thinner card or if you're not using watercolour paper, that your paper might buckle under all the water. If that's the case, you can place it under a heavy book or something similar for a day or so. Get it all nice and flat again before you make it into your finished card. I've also got one I made earlier of the tree. Here we go. The lines blended quite nicely in this one. It looks really watercolory. So I'm going to go ahead and make the finished card with this one. Got my base piece here, which I'll fold in half down that score line. To get a really crisp score line, you can go down it with a scraper tool or a brayer tool. I've got my brayer down there. That to one side, and then I've got a darker green rectangle, which is what this is going to go on. I'll glue this on. I'm using Bearly Art Glue. I also like Collall. Both of those glues are good because they don't bend or wrinkle the card like some glues can do. And because this is a strong, sturdy piece of card, it is thick. I'll add quite a bit of glue. Okay, that'll go right in the middle. So there's a nice even border of that green all the way around. Like that. And then to add a little bit of dimension to my card, I'll add some foam squares behind this. Zoom you out a little bit. You can see a bit easier. You could just glue it straight on, and this would be great if you're posting lots of cards, or that if you just don't want to spend that much on postage because it'll be really flat. I'm going to add just one level of foam squares on the back, which still means, at least in the UK, it'll still go through as a normal stamp. You won't need a large letter. These foam squares are a nice size for cards because you can just put a few on and it fills up lots of the space. I'm making sure that as well as putting some around the edge and in the corners, I've got some in the middle too, to give it stability across all of that piece of card. And now I can peel the tops off of my foam squares to reveal the stickiness underneath. This is another reason for making sure that your watercolour is really dry before putting the card together, because if that card was still wet and I turned it upside down like this, I risk smushing all of those ink colours together, or also getting the ink on my work surface, which I don't want. Okay. Put this right in the middle. Not very good at sticking things straight. There. And that is my Christmas tree watercolour card all done. This one I think it would look nice if you had some little gemstones in different colours to put them on the baubles, or even if you've got some glitter glue or something like the Nuvo drops from Tonic Studios that give you little bits of glitter or little raised sort of circles that could go on there. That would be nice and add a little bit of shine and dimension. You could add a sentiment if you wanted to, or any other decorations or embellishments, or do what I'm going to do and leave it nice and simple. Here's another look at my snowflake card. I've put some glittery card behind that, which gives a nice shine, and they make a lovely pair all displayed together. I hope that you've enjoyed this video on how to make Christmas cards using Cricut's watercolour pens. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for loads more Cricut crafts and free SVGs. I hope to see you tomorrow for day 6 of the Christmas Craft Countdown, but for now, thank you so much for watching. Bye!